we are going to do an idea I had for a Mohawk hat. I'm going to show you using the 24 peg loom. This was a Nifty Knitter set. This was the smallest loom, and then there's a red, a green, and a yellow working your way up. So again, it has 24 pegs. Now this is just an idea of how to do it. You may need to modify it, again, depending on the size. This size loom I typically use for maybe preemie hats, or maybe small size baby hats. Usually for baby hats, I use the red loom because I want it to, allow for them to grow a little bit. But for this sample, we're just going to use the blue loom. That way it fits completely in the screen. And what you're going to need is a pom-pom maker. This one, I believe, is a Clover brand. I got it through Joann's, and they come in different sizes. This is the biggest size, which produces pom-poms about this size, so they're pretty big. Now again, because we're doing a preemie hat, we may want to use a smaller one, but I figured I would just show you that when you do an adult size or kids size Mohawk hat, you're probably going to want the biggest one, and like I said, it'll produce like this big. But again, because we're using such a small hat, you got to think of proportion, and that's where we can go ahead and we can pick out a smaller one that we can use, big ones or two sets of small ones. So you can choose, honestly, what size you want. So what we're going to do, because we're using the smallest hat, is we're going to use either this size or that size. I'm leaning towards this size because I want the pom-pom to stand up. But again, for an adult size hat or a child size hat, you can use the biggest one and get a pom-pom about that size. I thought it was a different way of doing a Mohawk hat. Then you're going to use this to be the Mohawk at the top of the hat. So again, we're going to use the second to the smallest pom-pom, so I'm going to set that over here. So what we're going to want to do is make a few pom-poms up ahead of time. What I want to do is make up some pom-poms. So I thought I would show you how to do that really quick. I do have a video specific to pom-poms as well, but this won't take that long to make up, so I figure I can show you. Now with these pom-pom makers, they come apart like this. You got one side there, and you have the other one over here. So what you want to do is, usually I hold them both kind of parallel to each other like that. It's all about comfort for you, and then you find your end yarn, and we just wrap around both of them. They do bringing our yarn in between, coming down in between, because now we got to wrap that one. So we can close that off, and now we can continue. Hold your yarn, excuse me, bring it through this one, close it, grab yourself some scissors, snip it, and then what you're going to do is hold it this way, and you're going to use scissors, preferably ones that are kind of small and sharp enough, and just be careful. Put your scissors in between those two and snip your way up. There will be some loose ones that will pop right out, which is fine, but you're just going to work your way around. See how there's a groove right in there? That's where we're working. We go all the way around to the beginning. Then what you do is you cut yourself a little tail. Now I like to do a little extra tail because if I'm going to tie these in a hat, I want enough yarn to make do with that. So then you take this and you put it between those two. If you see it sliding in between the two spots. Okay, so if you pull this close, it's basically lining up in between there. And then you're going to tie it. I usually sometimes tie it twice. And once it's tied twice, what you do is you open this. So you open up that side, you open up that side, and you pull it apart. And you kind of rough it up a little bit. And then you look for any ones that might be too long. Keep in mind to keep the long strings separate so you can use them later for attaching it. And just kind of go like this, see if there's anything that pulls out. If it doesn't pull out, then you can just simply trim it till you get the shape that you kind of want. Okay, and then you're going to make a bunch of these, because what we're going to do with this is we're going to end up tying them in here to make our mini little Mohawk. So the next step is going to be the hat itself. Now for the hat itself, I'm actually going to use the drawstring cast on like I mentioned. I like this cast on because it closes up the circle and will make it easier to attach our pom-poms in a line to line it up for the Mohawk. So when we do the drawstring, you make your slip knot, attach it if you can to the outer peg, and then you just work your way back and forth. Again, I have a video specific to this that you can go and watch if you need more help. Now when you work your way around the second time, you're looking for where there's 2 strands and you're going to knit them over. And again, it's a little easier when you're not holding it for a camera. So then we just knit it over, knit it over. Till you get back to your starting peg. Okay. Now what you do, here, is we would lay this in front because that peg would still be laid in front, and now we can start wrapping the pegs. And you can wrap it whatever stitch you want to do. I actually want to do the chunky stitch, which means I need to wrap these 4 times. But what I usually like to do is once I do the drawstring, I like to go around and just do 1 row of regular E-wrap before I do the stitch I want to use. It just kind of helps with the, with the wrapping. So we're going to go right ahead and just wrap it. A little easier for when we pull the drawstring. Okay, so now we just knit this row over. Okay, and then what we can do now, since we're back to our beginning, is we're going to work our drawstring until we can close off the circle. So we're going to keep working around the next stitch I want to do, which I said is the chunky, which means we wrap, so we have 4 loops on a peg, and we knit the bottom 3 over the top. So that's going to be the next step that we do. I already went around and re-wrapped the peg so that I would end up having 3 loops on a peg. Now to do the chunky stitch, we're going to wrap around one more time, and these bottom 3 are going to get knitted over 1. That's what the chunky stitch is. So you're going to wrap, and then you want to take the bottom 3 over the top one. It's usually not this difficult. Okay. And again, go to the next peg, wrap it, take the bottom 3 over the top one. Okay, we're on our last couple here, and what you're going to do is you're going to continue this process at least 10 more, I would say 10 more rows, and then we're going to try to close it off. But it may vary depending on the yarn you're using. A bulkier yarn, you may not be able to do the chunky with on this loom. You may have to switch out your stitch to a regular knit. But this is just a regular Red Heart worsted weight normal size yarn, so that's why I was able to do it. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to rework that same process again, probably at least, I would say, anywhere from 7 to 10 more times so that I can close this off. But the first thing you can do is now take your little slip knot off of your outer peg, and you can work it on the inside now, because this is what you're going to be pulling to pull it closed. So go ahead and work another few rows, even just work 5 if you want, and then see if it closes off. I'm going to work it until I can get it where I can close it off. So again, we're going to work about another 7 to 10 rows, possibly less. I may even just do 5 and see if I can close it off. It's been a while since I've done drawstring on this one. So I'll meet you back here in a second. I've done a few more rows, and as you can see, I'm getting ready to be able to close it off. This is going to be the outside of the hat. So you're going to give this a little tug, because you want that hole to be as closed as you can. But we're also going to be putting one of these pom-poms there, so it doesn't have to be perfectly closed. So now you're going to use your crochet hook, because I want to tie it on the inside So I'm just going to go through, find my string, and bring it through this side. And I'm going to grab a stitch over here, grab my yarn, pull it through. So I have a second loop over here, pull it through again, give it a tug. This is just to help tie it off. As you can see, it's helping to close that off. So we can do another one over here if we want. Be careful about doing too many, because it's a baby hat. You don't want there to be too much hard edges for the baby on their head. Pull this through. And then you can trim this string. Okay. Now, like I said, this is the inside of the hat. This is the outside, which means the pom-poms, which I made 4 over here, we're going to line up along this. This is just to make it so that when we finish the hat, we already have a line of where our pom-poms go to make the mohawk part. So hopefully it'll be a little easier to add more, because you'll be able to see the continuation of the line. So we got these, and you can kind of fluff them up too, just to see it the way you want. Like I said, this was made using the little yellow one, which is the second size up. And we just got to figure out where we want to position it. Now this is the top of the hat, so I would say where your drawstring is closed, you'd want to put the first one there, because that's going to be the very top of the hat. And again, this is a way you can add pom-poms if you want, just at the top of the hat you can. So what we need is we need to go through and find our extra string. As you notice, we have 2 strings. So have it go through 1. Now go on the other side, and you're looking for that other string that we had left on the pom-pom, and we're pulling that through. So we've got this positioned in the middle. Turn it over, and simply tie it onto the hat. Perhaps a second tug just to make sure that it's tied. Then you can go ahead and trim this up a little bit so you don't have that excess skin. So you see we got 1 on there. Now, I know it looks really weird, doesn't it? Now you can grab your next one and line it up next to that one, and doing the same process. So it's almost like you want to be able to make a straight line down. So if you hold it sideways, like I got it, you can kind of see where you need to put it, because you can see where you tied, and you can pull this through and say, okay, I need a string to come through. Got 1, so you want to make sure you see which way that string's going here. So now we need this string to come on the other side. So just go gently on the other side of the pom-pom until we find that string. And we just gotta grab it. Get a little caught in our other yarn. Okay, so we pull that through. Alright, and then you check before you tie it that you got it kind of lined up where you want. Now turn it over and tie that one in place. And you can kind of see that you already had 1 tied there, and now you got another one tied there. Again, you can trim the string. So there's 2 that we have lined up. I'm going to add at least 1 more, and then I will have 3 on here, and then I can continue on with the hat project and then add them other ones as I go. But this, as you can see, will create a little poof at the top of the hat, because this is the top of the hat. So it'll help create our little mohawk at the top. And when they're all on, you can turn around and trim them to make them a little more even. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my 3rd one, and then we'll come back and we'll go on to the next part. Now, as you can see, we got 3 on there, and that is the start of our mohawk. Again, you're going to make more of these, so as you do the hat, you can choose whether to add more on, really depending on how much of a mohawk you want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue a couple more rows of doing the chunky knit until I get it down just a little further, and then I have an idea. So we're going to play with an idea in a little bit. So go ahead and do, I would say, do 4 more rows of this chunky knit and then come back. As you can see, I worked it a little bit further, and you can see how our mohawk is coming along more. Now you can choose now to add more if you want, or you can wait until you have it off the loom and add them then. But we're going to do a different technique. We're going to pick a spot to be the front. Now I know when we did our mohawk, we did it kind of this way. So what we're going to want to do is make sure we consider a part the front of the hat. I notice I'm a little blurry. Okay. So I'm going to actually bind off a few of these stitches here, because I want the back of the hat, when you look at it sideways, to come down more than the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my hat here because I've got my Mohawk, and what I want to do is make sure what I should have did was lined up my Mohawk with this peg, but I didn't. So what I want to do now to make sure I'm binding off where it's going to be the hat is I need to mark it off, which means I need to find my stitch markers or any other kind of marker. This is going to make it easier for you to determine and make sure you don't go past it. So we're going to grab just 2 stitch markers, and what these are going to do is help us make sure we don't go past where we want to bind off, because again, we're looking at this to be the front of the hat. So I'm looking at where my pom-pom is, and I'm coming up, and I knowing I want to include this one, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and I believe I'm going to go 4 on this side. And I put the stitch marker in wrong. Oh, come on. Okay. And I'm going to lock it into place. Really, these stitch markers don't usually give me this much problems. Okay, so count back. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We skipped this one, and now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to place this one on that. These are the stitches that I'm going to bind off. Now it's going to be different for whatever hat you do. Doing a bigger hat on a different loom, you're going to probably need to do more of the bind off if you decide you want to do your Mohawk hat this way. You could continue on with it and make a normal hat and just add the Mohawk. I just wanted to try doing something a little different than I normally do. So what we're going to do is we have our stitch markers here, and luckily we actually have our yarn pretty close to this peg here. So I'm going to come over, I'm just going to do a regular knit. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come back over excuse me, and we want to bind off these pegs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working my normal way around until I get back to this one. Once I get here, then I'm going to start binding them off. So we're going to continue around here, and I'm just doing a regular knit stitch. Or, excuse me, I'm not actually going to knit these over, I'm wrapping them, I should say. Because we still want to have the same chunky stitch. If I only E-wrap them, I'm not going to have this same stitch. So we're going to wrap, so this will be the second time, but when we get to my stitch marker that we'll be seeing soon, we're going to start binding on, which means I'm going to leave these alone because I will come back to these later. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind off these stitches. So I'm going to come over, I'm going to wrap it, knit it, I'm going to give it one more wrap, knit it, and then move it over. I'm going to knit it over, wrap it, knit it over, move it over. And continue this process till you get to your other stitch marker. Okay. What this is going to do is create like a flat panel in the back. It's binding off the front to be the front of the hat. Make sure we don't lose our loop. Okay. And as you can see, we're getting close to that. And again, how many rewrappings you do really depends on the loom you're using. A smaller gauge loom, you may not need to do them in between as much as we are here. So a lot of it is practice and determining as you go around what you want it to be. And again, we're getting to this peg, which has our stitch marker. But see, since we wanted to keep the chunky stitch, okay, we're going to bring this over. I'm going to knit this over. Because if you look back here, we've already knitted this off, we can take this off. this becomes the front of the hat. And now when we look at this, we wanted this one off. We can actually move it over and treat it as the third loop of this one for doing the chunky knit. So move it over, and now we can continue wrapping as a flat panel back and forth. Okay, so we're going to work our way this way. Again, we still want the 4 loops to be on there. So when we look back here, we've got 3. But as we come back, we have enough to wrap over. We're leaving this one alone because we don't have 4 on it yet, but we have 3 on this, so we can knit this one over. Okay, and then we go to the next one. And it's a little trickier because the end pegs, you have to wait until they have enough to wrap to make it the same type of stitch. So go ahead and push those down. Now I'm going to wrap more than one this time just so I can go a little faster. You can choose, like I said, a different stitch as well. It's really going to be up to you. And it really going to depend on the baby or the child you're doing it for. Some people have higher foreheads, so you may need to go a little further before you bind off the front. It's really going to depend on the person. Okay, I know we have 4 on this one, but remember we moved one over, so we're going to actually leave this one alone and work our way back because we're going to have 4 on the other one over there. And then what we'll end up doing on this one is we'll actually end up knitting we'll end up knitting a 4 over one. And as you can see, this is bound off now, and it becomes kind of like creating a part for the head, and now we're working just on the back. If you wanted to, you could change out the stitch if you didn't want to do it chunky throughout, but that's up to you. So now I'm going to work my way back, and again, I'm not knitting this one over yet. So that's my loop here. Until I find my way back. Where did I lost the loop? Get back up there. Lost the loop there. Okay. So you're going to worry about knitting that over on the second time around. Why does that look weird? What did I just do? It's not, oh, that's why, because that turned on me. I hate when that happens. It came off the wrong way. There we go. Now that looks right. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to work our way back. And I shouldn't have knit that one over. Tell you, I'm having one of those days. Okay. So we got to rewrap that one, and we're working our way back this way. Now remember, because this one now has 3 on the bottom and 1 on the top, I can knit it over. But I can't knit these over yet, so I'm going to push them down on my way and work my way back. Okay, so we've got to work our way back to the other side again. Now remember, because we actually have 4, we're going to be knitting all these, which might be a little tricky, over top of that top peg, or top loop, sorry. Okay, now again, when we work our way back, we're going to end up with 4 loops, so we can go ahead, push these down, and knit over. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to work your way back and forth, remembering that the end pegs, you got to wait till there's enough loops on it in order to do the chunky stitch, the 3 over 1. But because these have 3, I can now do that. So go ahead, now what you're working now is the back of the hat. As you can see, You can see a little bit. If this was a head, this is up top, and it's working, so we'll have more in the back. So go ahead, and you're going to want to figure out, in order to figure out how long you want that, it will depend on the person you're making the hat for. If they want it maybe to touch the base of their neck, maybe they want it up a little higher. So I'm probably going to do, I would say maybe about 5 rows just to check it out. But I mean, you're going to have to check it out yourself and see, and a lot of it is just seeing where the front is and the back. I'm hoping I can actually find a doll to be able to put this on afterwards of my daughter's, but I'm going to work this a little bit more till I'm comfortable where I think it'd be doable for on a person or a little baby. I don't know any babies this small, but it's really cute, and the cast off here looks really nice. It's a nice clean edge, so I'm going to just keep working that, and then I'll show you how we can bind it off at the end, and then we can move on to the next step. Now I worked it a little further. I didn't want to go down that far because this is just a sample hat. And what I want to say is there was a little mess up on the stitches here, so I would actually say with doing the chunky stitch, the end pegs, you may need to modify the stitch that's on the end of those because they kind of came out a little more of a gap than I would like. So all you have to do is just try to modify that. Maybe you would actually do a knit one over on these and keep your middle ones as the chunky. That's just a suggestion. And so as you can see now, you can see the difference between there and there. Now, like I said, up here is where one kind of messed up. I think I might have missed a wrapping. So what you could do, like I said, is just the end pegs, treat them a little differently, but it's still going to look kind of cute as the main idea of it. Now what we want to do is we want to bind off the rest of this hat so that we can finish it up. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to knit this peg over. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same technique we had before. We're going to move it over to this peg, knit it over, rewrap it, oops, sorry, wrong way, rewrap it, move it over, oh, come on, knit over, rewrap, move over. Again, how many loops you do in between is going to be up to you. And just work your way back to that starting peg. I said the only thing you'd have to modify is the stitches you do on the end pegs. The bind off we did was totally fine. I just misplaced how I should do the end pegs for the chunky stitch. Oops. So again, what I would do is on the end pegs is I would actually just keep doing a regular knit on those, or do like a half stitch on those, and that would probably help with the gap that we saw. I may have misplaced a stitch when I went around too, so that could be why it looked a little weird on that one side. This is just to show you the basic idea of how to do it. A lot of things you can end up modifying as you do them yourself. Okay, we're getting to the last couple here. Okay, got on the last peg. And knit it over. Now if you have your crochet hook, you can go ahead and put that loop right on your crochet hook. And cut your yarn. And now you're just going to want to tighten it in there. And like I said, the end pegs I kind of messed up on, but they wouldn't be that hard to fix. Okay, and then you can do your little trim. Okay, and there we go. We got our little hat that if you were to fold it in half, you can see that the back is down a little more than the other. Again, the end thing, I think I dropped a stitch there by accident. That's why, because it should be connected there. This side, you can see, is a little better, so I must have just dropped a stitch. So be very careful when you're binding off the front and working just the back. And this is how the back looks. So now what you can do is you got your mohawk here, you can continue, which I had a mohawk. Okay, so what I can do now is I can figure out how far down do I want the mohawk to go. Do I want an extra one in the front? And then I can keep going down and making it as wide as I want to. So this is just an idea of how I can do a different type of mohawk hat. I thought the pom-poms were good because they were a little easier to do and a little less time consuming than adding a lot of tassel. So again, just make as many as you want. This again was done on the little blue loom, but each hat's going to be different. A chunky stitch does give you a little thicker if you see. You can't really see through it. And I just thought it'd be a really cute little idea.